work here?
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Marty Thomas with North Fulton Master Gardeners, and today I'll be doing a presentation about fabulous fall fairy gardens. This presentation is being recorded. You'll be receiving a link, follow-up link in your email in a few days. Also, I want you to know that as I'm going along in the PowerPoint, if you see any screens that you're interested in, feel free to take out your cell phone and take a picture of it or make a screenshot of it. We'll save all questions until the end of the presentation. So put your questions into the Q&A window. Let's get started. A little about myself. I've been a master gardener now for the past 5 years. I have a background in elementary education. I taught school, and I've been a substitute teacher in Fulton County schools for the past 25 years. I also work part-time at City Academy of Atlanta. I have taught various children's arts and craft classes as well as art camps over the years. And my favorite art camp is my fairy garden camp. I have 4 grandchildren, and I love doing arts and crafts with them as well. Our agenda for today, we're going to talk about what is a fairy garden themes and styles. We'll talk about size and location of your fairy garden. I'll show you some examples. We'll talk about supplies and resources, plants you can use in your fairy garden. Then I'll be doing a demonstration for you of some fairy gardens that I have created. I'll be going through step by step how I made them. And then at the end, we'll create a fairy garden together. So what is a fairy garden? Well, a fairy is a type of mythical being found in folklore that often possesses magical powers and a penchant for trickery. A fairy garden is a storytelling scene that includes small plants, small structures, or small furniture, animals, insects, and fairies and gnomes. It can be in a small container or in a small cultivated space in your yard or near a tree, whose purpose is to be a safe place for fairies to live. Fairies can be hand-picked and placed in the garden, or it can be a habitat that fairies will visit when no one is looking. You can have different things for your fairy gardens if you choose. You could have a tea party theme, a farmyard theme, a forest theme, beach theme, holiday themes. You can change them with the seasons. Be creative. They can be large or small. Some examples of large fairy gardens could be in an old wagon or a wheelbarrow, bird baths, large flower pots. Small fairy gardens could be in a small container, small baskets, even in a teacup. They can be made for indoors or outdoors. If outdoors, you need to consider the plants you're going to buy, whether they need sun or shade. The suggested scale is a 1 to 12 scale, large enough to be seen, but small enough for the safety and comfort of the fairies, of course. For example, a foot-tall plant in the real world is only an inch in the world of fairies. I'm going to show you some pictures of some fairy gardens now. I found these on Pinterest. I think these are a great example of some fall fairy gardens. I love the pumpkin that has been hollowed out. They filled it with potting soil, put in some fall mums, pansies, ornamental cabbage. Then they placed the little miniature fairy furniture, the miniature hay bale and pumpkins. Very cute. And next to that, you see a tin pail, another good container for a fairy garden. They put in the potting soil, added their fall plants, put in a cute little fairy house that says pumpkins on it, added a little fence and pumpkins, very cute. This would look nice on anyone's front porch. And like I said, you can change these with the seasons or with the holidays. These are examples of farmyard fairy gardens. On the left, you see a fairy garden that's in someone's backyard. You see the barn, the silo, the windmill. This would be a nice fairy garden for children to play in. I know my grandchildren enjoy playing in my fairy gardens that are in my backyard. On the right, you see a farm-themed fairy garden that's in a bird bath. This belongs to a friend of mine. You can see the tractor, the pickup truck, and the farmhouse. Very cute. This is an antique mailbox someone actually placed in their garden. And when you open the door inside, you find a fairy house. You see the miniature bed, the chair and table. They put moss down on the floor. That is so cute. Here's some of our fellow Master Gardeners. They're at the Sandy Springs Festival. And we always have a booth there called Little Diggers, where we teach children about plants and they create something they can take home. This past year, they created fairy gardens. Let me show you some pictures. Here they are creating a miniature fairy garden. You can see the supplies they used. They used some colored gemstones, pebbles, colored sand, some little miniature plastic animals and fairies. Here's another set of pictures. You can see more supplies. And on the right is the finished product. They have a miniature fairy garden they can take home, and it's made to hang up in a window. Now here's a fairy garden in a flower pot. On the left, you see some of the supplies. They all came from a hobby store. On the right, you can see where they actually put them into the fairy garden. They put in the potting soil, gemstones on top, added some live plants, put in the miniature furniture, the fairies, and used some blue pebbles to create a little pond area in the fairy garden. Very cute. Here's one of our co-presidents and her granddaughter. They made this fairy garden together. Notice the container is actually a ceramic container. They put in a little potting soil, added a few plants, put in their fairies, some gemstones, used some blue colored pebbles to create a water stream through the fairy garden. On the left, you see some of the plants that they use. They use small ferns and polka dot plants. Those go well in fairy gardens. And on the right, you see some miniature dinosaurs. You could actually put those in a fairy garden if you want to. I think my grandson would probably like that. Now, these pictures are from some of my fairy garden camps that I've done over the years. On the left is a farm-themed fairy garden. You can see the little barn that the little girl painted. She put a fairy in and also some farm animals. She made a little walkway there with wooden chips. And that fairy garden is in a tin container. And on the right, this is a pet lover fairy garden. And she put in her fairies and also some miniature dogs. She has a dog house and a bird house. And in the next picture on the left, you can see her sign that says, "There is no poop fairy, clean up after your dog." I thought that was so cute. On the right are some examples of teacup fairy gardens. We made this at one of my camps called Tea Party Fairy Garden Camp. And we gave ceramic cups and saucers to the children. They glazed them. We fired them in the kiln. Then we put some potting soil in the cup, added a succulent. They hand painted the wooden fairy on a stick, and we inserted that into the cup. Okay, fairy garden supplies and resources. Well, you can find supplies at any craft store. You might even find a few things at your local garden shop. I buy most of my supplies at the Dollar Tree. I love dollar stores. The Dollar General as well has supplies, but by far the Dollar Tree, best place. And you want to go to more than one. I usually go to 3 different ones when I'm buying my supplies. Thrift stores are also a great place to shop for supplies. I find a lot of my containers at thrift stores, and baskets make great containers. So do flower pots, terracotta saucers, any type of ceramic dish. You can find a lot of those at thrift stores and even at garage sales and estate sales. Now, what type of supplies would you need? Well, that would depend on the theme of your fairy garden. You could use buttons, beads, jewels, stones and pebbles, seed pods and pine cones. You can buy the little wooden bird houses at any craft store, paint those and turn those into fairy garden houses. You could add some costume jewelry even to your little fairy house. Miniature bird baths, you will definitely need moss, a lot of moss, potting soil. Terracotta saucers also make a nice container you can use for your fairy garden. You could use some fishing line and wire if you wanted to create a little clothesline or a swing for your fairy. You will need glue. I use tacky glue, never Elmer's glue. Sometimes I use the E6000 industrial strength glue for heavy duty projects. You need craft paint. I use acrylic paint. You could even add some lights to your fairy garden. You can buy small battery powered fairy lights, find those at the Dollar Tree. Use twigs, you can use glitter, clothespins, wooden pegs can be made into fairies. And you definitely need some plants. They can be live plants or artificial. Speaking of plants, here's some examples. Here's some creeping thyme, creeping Jenny, which is my favorite, Dusty Miller, another good perennial to use. Any type of moss is good. Any type of fern, succulents are great, such as sedum, portulaca, hen and chicks, jade, foxtail ferns. Polka dot plant looks very nice also in a fairy garden. You can actually use any type of plant you want in your fairy garden. And today I'm going to use fall flowers in some of my fairy gardens. Hi, now we're going to look at some fairy gardens that I have created, and I'm going to go through each fairy garden step by step and tell you how I made them. And then at the end, we're going to create a fairy garden together. Okay, first I want to show you this really cute fall fairy garden that I created. I found this basket at a thrift store. It is the perfect size for a fairy garden. I bought some pebbles at the Dollar Tree, where I buy almost all my items for fairy gardens. I used maybe 3 or 4 packages of these little pebbles, covered the bottom of the basket. That way, if you use any live plants, the pebbles are there for drainage. This is a gourd that a friend gave me. So I hand painted it with acrylic paint, made a cute little gnome fairy house out of it. Now, anytime you use acrylic paints, you need to spray it with a spray. I get this Minwax spray at Home Depot. It is a polyurethane spray. It helps protect the paint from the elements if you're going to have it outside. So I'm going to put the little gnome house in here. Of course, I have to have a gnome, again from the Dollar Tree. I found this cute little hay bale at the Dollar Tree, and my favorite thing are these little wool pumpkins. You can get 5 for $1 at the Dollar Tree in a package. So I bought these little pumpkins. We'll put one on top of the hay bale, one in front of the fairy house. And believe it or not, I found this pickup truck at the Dollar Tree. They have one aisle with $3 and $5 items. So I thought, hey, he'd be cute in a fall fairy garden. So I got a pickup truck. He's sitting on the bed of pebbles here. I don't know if you can see it, but I have this grass here. This comes in packages at the Dollar Tree as well. So I'll put this in over the pebbles. Then I bought some little figurines. Here's a little mailbox that I added to go with the gnome house. And my favorite little thing is this little flower pot of sunflowers. Now you can buy these sunflowers in a package at the Dollar Tree. They have wires on the back.
The miniature flower pots came from Michael's. They're $1 a piece. I bought some floral foam, cut it, pressed it down inside. Here's what the foam looks like. You can buy this at the Dollar Tree as well. And then I stuck the flowers in, took some moss, and put on top, and there you go. You have a cute little flower pot to add into your fairy garden. So I thought, well, I have these flowers, but maybe I need some live flowers too. So I bought a mum, put it in this small pot. Make sure your pots have a hole in the bottom for drainage. If they don't have a hole, then put a few pebbles in the bottom of the pot. And I put my little flower in there, and there you go. This would be really cute on a porch or on your deck. Makes a cute fall centerpiece. Okay, I'm gonna put this aside and get another one of my fairy gardens. Now this one's not a fall, this is a summer fairy garden that I created at one of my fairy garden camps that I taught. It was a fairy garden and mermaid camp, and so all of our fairy gardens were beach themed. My granddaughters actually made this with me, so I found the container at the Goodwill, it's just plastic. Went to Home Depot, got some play sand, poured the sand in, went to the Dollar Tree, bought the blue jewels. They come in a little bag. I'll show you how that looks. They come like this at the Dollar Tree. Put those in for water. And then these little houses, they come unpainted. You can get them at Walmart, any craft store, and occasionally the Dollar Tree has these as well. So they painted the house, put this in on top of the sand, and then all the little fairy figurines are beach themed. This is my favorite. It says it's 5 o'clock somewhere. I think he's so cute. And we have the little beach Volkswagen bus and a boat and a beach ball. And then my 4-year-old granddaughter had to make a mermaid out of a wooden clothespin to add to it. So this is our beach themed fairy garden. And it's fun for the kids to play with. A really easy fairy garden to make, and kids can make this quite easily, is in a mason jar or ball jar. You need to get a wide mouth jar. You can find these at Walmart. In the bottom of the jar, I put some moss. I stuck in a fairy and a bird bath down at the Dollar Tree, a few little dried flowers, and then I bought a string of lights at the Dollar Tree, and I'm going to turn them on. They're battery operated. So let me turn that on for you. One second. This is why you need a wide mouth jar so you can reach inside. Tuck that back down in there. And then the lid I hand painted with acrylic paint. Put some twine around it, glued that on, and then glued the flowers on top. So there you have a fairy garden in a jar. I think I'll put this in my granddaughter's bedroom upstairs and make a cute little night light. So this is another easy but cute idea. Now one of my very favorites, since it's fall, and fall is my favorite season, is this pumpkin fairy garden. I took a real pumpkin, I took acrylic paint, painted the windows, the door, went out in the yard, found some sticks, cut them to fit, and glued them on with E6000. Let me show you this glue. You can find this at craft stores. I got this at Michael's. You really need this for a lot of your projects, especially things that are going to be outdoors. This is industrial strength glue. It has pretty strong fumes. I would do it outside or wear a mask if you're indoors when you use it. So I glued on the twigs around the windows, around the door, glued a little moss at the top of the door, on top of the pumpkin, and then I added some cute little silk flowers and a butterfly. And to top it off, I found these cute little steps at the Dollar Tree. So here's the little steps that go up to the door, and of course we have to add a gnome, right? Because this is his house. Isn't this cute? You could put this on your front porch. All right, move this over. Here's another fairy garden that's very easy to make using a flower pot. Any flower pot can be a flower garden, a fairy garden. I glued on this little door. You can find the doors at the Dollar Tree or any craft store. Again, I used the E6000 to glue this on. This took a little bit of time because I used the pebbles that I found at the Dollar Tree. They come in a package that looks like this. And I glued the pebbles on one at a time using E6000. And when you glue it on, you have to hold it for just a few seconds for it to sit, and then go to the next one. It takes about 72 hours for this glue to completely dry. So I think this is really cute. You've got your fairy door, and then you can put a plant in your pot. So it's fall, so I put a mom in. And I will definitely put this out on my deck. I think this is cute. Okay, here's one of my favorite fairy gardens. Another basket that I found at a thrift store. Now this basket's kind of deep, so I needed to fill in some space at the bottom. So I took a plastic tablecloth like the one on this table that you get at the Dollar Tree, just wadded it up, stuffed it in the basket. And that made it waterproof as well. Then I took moss and put the moss down inside of the basket. I took pebbles and made a little walkway between my two fairy houses. Now these fairy houses are so cute. I bought these ready-made. I actually found these at the Dollar General. Here's a teapot fairy house and another cute little fairy house here. And then all the little figurines came from either Dollar General or the Dollar Tree. So I put those in. Here's a little fairy cart. Now the teacup and saucer antiques. I love to collect antique china. So I got out one of my cups and saucer sets, put these in. You could actually plant a live plant in your cup, but I have a fake succulent. Again, this came from the Dollar Tree. It's not real, but it looks real. Came in the pot, fit perfectly in the cup. So there you have a tea party fairy garden. I think I'm going to use this when I have a tea party with my grandchildren. The next time they come visit, we do that a lot. Now, when I was doing my tea party camp a few years ago, all the girls made a fairy garden. Then they made a head wreath out of silk flowers. We just took ribbon and hot glue. We cut the flowers and glued them onto the ribbon, and then we tied the ribbon around their heads to make sure it fit. And on the last day of camp, they wore their wreath of flowers in their hair. We gave them fairy wings we bought at the Dollar Tree. They wore their wings. They used their beautiful fairy gardens as the centerpieces for the table. And we had a tea party, and it was so fun. And then they got to keep their cup and saucer to take home, of course. And speaking of teacups, let me show you this fairy garden. Here is a teacup and saucer. Yes, they can be fairy gardens as well. Here's my little gnome I'll put on top. I put potting soil into the cup, moss on the top. Let's turn them around this way. And I love these little miniature pots and miniature garden tools. Now these were given to me by a friend who knew I loved gardening and knew I loved to make fairy gardens. So here's my little gnome, and he's a gardener. So we're going to put him there and stick his tools into the soil. And voila, you have a miniature fairy garden and a teacup. Very simple to do. I'll move this over here. Since we're talking about China, here's another fairy garden that I made using some antique plates that I had collected years ago. And so I have a dessert plate on the bottom, saucer at the top. And what I did was I went to the Dollar Tree and I bought a candlestick. And using the E6000 glue, I actually turned the candlestick upside down. And I glued the top of the candlestick to the center of the bottom plate and the bottom of the candlestick underneath the top plate. Gave it a couple of days to dry, and I was using it to put jewelry on in my bathroom, or you could use it to serve candy on or cupcakes on. But then I looked at it and thought, hey, I can make a fairy garden out of that. So I did. So I put a cute little fairy house on top with some moss and these tiny little gnomes and bird baths. You can get 3 in a package at the Dollar Tree of these little miniature fairy pieces. Put some pebbles at the bottom, a little bench, a little trellis, and a gnome, and there you have a fairy garden. So simple. Move that over there. Now I love baskets, and I had said earlier that baskets are one of the best containers you can use for fairy gardens. I use them all the time with my students in camp, and I saw this little miniature basket at a thrift store, and I just had to get it. It was so cute. So I filled it with pebbles, so it's quite heavy, and I potted a marigold, put the plant inside, and just added some accessories, a little house and a bench and a gnome. So there you go. You have a fairy garden. So simple. Now this one is simply a potted mum and coleus for fall. And I was at a thrift store and I saw this little wooden house and I thought, how cute. This would make a cute fairy garden house. So I stuck him in along with a gnome and a little sign that says welcome fairies. So you can make any flower pot into a fairy garden just by adding a few accessories like this with your plants in the pot. And I love the color of this pot. It's so perfect for fall. Now this fairy garden, this is actually a gnome house I created several years ago with some of my students in a camp, and my grandchildren have made this as well. It's simply a clay saucer and a flower pot. So you paint it with white paint, acrylic paint, let it dry. Then you come back and you paint your door, windows, flowers, whatever you like to put around it. And I put gnome, sweet gnome, above the door. Then you take your saucer, turn it upside down, and paint the top to look like a toadstool. And that is the roof of your house. So there you have a gnome house. And this gnome house has been outside in my flower bed for probably 4 or 5 years now. So it's a little bit weathered, but it still looks pretty good. I sprayed it. Once again, if you paint anything that you're going to put outside, you need to spray it with polyurethane. So again, flower pots, baskets. You can use so many different things to create fairy gardens, as you've seen today. Now we're going to get ready to create a fairy garden together. Hi, now we're going to look at some fairy gardens that I have created, and I'm going to go through each fairy garden step by step and tell you how I made them. And then at the end, we're going to create a fairy garden together. Okay, first I want to show you this really cute fall fairy garden that I created. I found this basket at a thrift store. It is the perfect size for a fairy garden. I found some pebbles at the Dollar Tree where I buy almost all my items for fairy gardens. I used maybe 3 or 4 packages of these little pebbles, covered the bottom of the basket. That way if you use any live plants, the pebbles. Now we're going to create a fairy garden together in this large container. This is a half wine barrel. This one is actually made of plastic. I found it at the Dollar General. It did not have a hole in the bottom, which you really need for drainage, so I poked a hole in using a hammer and nails. But if you can't put a hole in, you can always put a few pebbles in the bottom of your pot. I filled it up with good organic potting soil that you can find at Home Depot or Lowe's. Put this in, and now we're going to add some fall flowers. Okay, I'm going to start with a mum, which is a perennial. Digging a little hole here, make room for it. Need to loosen it up. Take your mum out. Now, in preparation for planting these, I already pulled off the bottom roots, and you want to loosen the roots up before you plant them. Look and see which is the prettiest side. You want that facing the front. So I'm going to put the mum in right like this. There we go. Just like so. So this is a filler. Okay, now I'm going to add a thriller. This is a coleus, which will grow tall. Coleuses are either annuals or perennials. This one is an annual. It's a pretty purple color. Again, I tore off half the roots, over. I'm gonna take it out. Tore off half the roots. And I'm gonna put this on this other side of the lawn. This is an annual, so it only lives for one season. And I'm gonna put this in. Just like this. So we've got orange, yellow, and purple. And now I'm gonna add an ornamental cabbage. And these are great for fall pots because they love the cooler weather. I tore off half the roots already, so I'm going to put it right here in front of the mob. There, just like that. So now we have some fall plants. We need to add our fairy garden accessories. So I went to Michael's and I bought a wooden birdhouse. They sell them for $5. I painted this with acrylic paint. After I painted it, I sprayed it with a polyurethane. Once it dried, I glued some moss onto the top. And again, you can buy moss at any craft store. I'll show you some moss I have over here. It comes in packages like this at Hobby Lobby and Michael's. You can buy smaller bags of it like this at the Dollar Tree. It's called rainbow moss. And you can actually buy strips of it with plastic on the back that you can cut with scissors if you want to be precise and have it, you know, just fit perfectly inside your fairy garden. But this came out of my yard. I glued it on with tacky glue, not Elmer's glue, but tacky glue. I found some lichen. I pulled off a tree, put this on the front, and then on the sides of the house, I have pieces of pine cone. So I just pulled off little pieces of pine cone and glued it on with the E6000 glue that I showed you earlier. Let that dry for a couple of days, and then I glued moss across the front, and we have a little fairy house. So I'm going to put the fairy house right here. And I have one more little plant I need to plant. This is my spiller. I took this out of one of my flower pots actually. This is Creepy Jenny. It is a perennial, and I'm just going to add it to the side right over here.
Have any questions? So I'm going to ask an additional one. Boy gardens.
And anytime you
Thought it's
plant anything, you need
Star Wars
to make sure
theme.
you give all your plants
They
some
go
water.
character theme, something like that for you to think about.
And for added texture and also to keep moisture in your soil, I'm going to put a little bit of black mulch. This is black bark mulch. I'm going to put this around. I'm going to move my little fairy house over. Spread this all around in here. There we go. And that'll keep the moisture in when you water your plants. And it also just looks nice. It looks more finished. So there we have our plants, our fairy house. Now we need some other accessories. I'll take off my gloves. I found this cute little fairy house at the Dollar Tree. It's a pumpkin house, so I'm going to put him right over here by the coleus. And since we have two fairy houses, I think we need to add a little walkway. So I'm going to use some stones to create a little walkway through the fairy garden. And you can find these pebbles at the Dollar Tree. They come in the brown and they also come in black. Walkway there, a little pathway from one to the other. So I'm going to put this little fence in right here. It has some pumpkins on it, and of course we have to have a fairy. She's sitting on a pumpkin. We're going to put her right there. And this is Happy Fall. Put that right in the front, right there. I have a mailbox that's so cute. I'm going to put this over here in front of this fairy house and a little pot. So there we go. We now have a fall fairy garden, and it was so easy to make. You can turn any flower pot into a fairy garden as long as you have space to add a few little fairies and a few little fairy houses. Then you have a fairy garden. Quite easy to do. I think I'll put this out on my front porch. This was so fun. I enjoyed doing this with you today.
I hope you enjoyed watching the videos. I'm going to show you now some pictures up close of a few of those fairy gardens that I just created for you. Here's the beach themed fairy garden. You can get a better view here. You can see the sand and shells, the blue gems used for the water, the cute little beach themed fairy objects that I put in there all came from the Dollar Tree, the cute little gnome with his sign that says it's 5 o'clock somewhere, and the little wooden birdhouse that we painted. On the right is a close-up of one of the fall fairy gardens in a basket with the painted gourd in the pickup truck with the little miniature pumpkins. And on the left, these are an example of some things children can make for their fairy gardens. You don't have to buy everything that goes in your fairy garden. You can make things. The little fairy at the top is a fairy that we created at one of my fairy garden camps. We used a wooden clothespin with some silk flowers for the skirt and a little silk flower for the hat, made a cute little fairy out of that. And at the bottom, my granddaughters made this out of wooden pegs. They painted it with acrylic paint, glued yarn on for hair, and used silk flower petals for the wings. And there's some miniature toadstools there. Those are actually made out of wine corks that were painted brown. We took clay and made the tops of the toadstools and then painted that with acrylic paint and let it dry. On the left is a close-up shot of that tea party fairy garden. You can see that cute little teapot fairy house, the other fairy house with the flower on top, and the little pebble walkway between the two houses there, along with a close-up of the cup and saucer. And on the right is the flower pot that I made a gnome house out of by just gluing on that little fairy door with pebbles around it. There's the close-up of the other gnome house made out of a flower pot and clay saucer for the roof. And on the right, a close-up of the pumpkin fairy house that was a hand-painted windows and door, glued on the moss and twigs and the silk flowers, and added the little steps to the front door. Here are some of the miniature fairy gardens. There on the right is the teacup fairy garden with a gnome in it. I love those little miniature pots and miniature garden tools. In the center is the tiered china server that I turned into a fairy garden. And then on the left is the mason jar fairy garden with the lights inside. All right, Dana, do we have any questions? While you're working on that, Dana, I'm going to go over our gardening lecture series. It's about to come to an end. We have one more class left. Next Sunday, November the 9th at 2 o'clock, we have the Gardens of the North Fulton Master Gardeners. And you'll actually be taking a tour of some of our master gardens. It should be great. If you're interested in signing up for this class, check out the link at the bottom on the right to register. And all of our past classes are on our YouTube channel. Look at the link at the bottom of the page on the left. You might want to make a screenshot or take a picture of this so you'll have these websites for future reference. Okay, Dana, you ready with questions?
Yes, Marty. We have our first question is, can these be made as part of an outdoor landscape?
Yes, they can. Absolutely. And I have been to places like Chattahoochee Nature Center where I'm walking along the trails there, and they have fairy gardens along the trail in with their landscaping as you're walking along. Also see the same thing at the Chattahoochee Nature Center. They have a butterfly garden there with a walking trail as you go along, beautifully landscaped, but you have little fairy gardens tucked here and there. And they even took some of the tree stumps there and turned those into fairy gardens. So cute. They either painted on a door or glued on a door and added a roof to the top of the tree stump and created a fairy house out of it. So absolutely, you can add it to your landscape.
What is the ideal ages for children to make these gardens?
Well, I take children in my camps anywhere from age 4 all the way up to age 12. I think my youngest granddaughter's 4, and she enjoys making them. Of course, the older they get, the more creative they get. I think that was a 10-year-old that created the pet lover fairy garden that I showed you. That was so cute. But all ages, children love it, and they like to play with them later. That's the nice thing about fairy gardens. They can play with them. I find little fairies all over my backyard where my grandkids have just scattered them around because they're busy playing with them.
Do you also do fairy gardens with a tree outside? And please explain.
Okay. I have some fairy gardens at the base of a tree in my backyard. I actually went on a garden tour a few years ago and saw some amazing fairy gardens in this lady's backyard where she took wooden chips that were maybe 12 feet across and actually attached them to her tree trunks using L brackets. And she would put a fairy garden on that wooden chip, and she had them going up the trees as well as at the base of the tree. It was very interesting to see that.
Okay, why do you tear off a half of the roots of the plants before you plant them?
Well, when you buy plants at the store, they're usually root bound and there's too many roots in the pot. So you want to tear off some and loosen those roots up so they can absorb water better.
Okay, speaking of water, how do you water it and how often?
Okay, well, what I do is I like to stick my finger into the soil about 1 inch deep. And if it's dry, it needs some water. So just check your soil. And also when you buy plants, they usually come with a label that tells you, whether they need sun or shade, and gives you an idea of how often you need to water the plant. But check the soil with your finger. You definitely want to keep them watered.
Okay. What kind of minwax do you use on the gourds?
That was a spray, minwax spray, polyurethane, that you can find at like Home Depot or Lowe's. I use that on anything I paint that I put outside. Otherwise, it will weather in the elements.
Is the E6000 different than super glue?
Yes, it is. E6000 is a much stronger glue. It's industrial strength. Like I was saying in my demonstration, it's very strong. You need to probably wear a mask when you use it. I even use disposable gloves when I use it to keep it off my skin. But it works really well when you're gluing together heavy objects, like if you're putting pebbles onto a flower pot or one of the fairy doors on. You definitely need the E6000. Putting the pine cones pieces onto the little fairy house, you would need the E6000 for that. The tacky glue just won't hold it.
Do you have any suggestions for making a themed fairy garden that boys would enjoy making and playing with?
Yes. Well, I showed a picture of the miniature dinosaurs already. Those would be cute in a boy's fairy garden. You could use like miniature Lego men, Lego figures, any of the little miniature action figures. Actually, you can buy little army men at the dollar store. They could put those in their fairy garden if they wanted to. And there's miniature action figures. I've actually seen those at the Dollar Tree. So I think a little boy would probably like putting those in his fairy garden.
Okay, that's it for questions right now, Marty. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dana. All right, let's move on to the next one. We want to say thank you to all of our partners for getting the word out, and also to our media partners as well. And now for a little quick point of reference, the Georgia Green Landscape Stewards Program is created by the University of Georgia Extension, and it is a certification program for businesses and residences in Georgia. And their goal is to provide a fact-based information to clientele and to help them implement sustainable green practices in their landscapes. With sustainable land management practices, we can help protect these natural resources for generations to come. If that's something that interests you, check out their website below. You can learn all about North Fulton Master Gardeners on any of our local social media outlets. Here's a list here. One of our annual fundraisers is called Give and Garden. And if you'd like to support North Fulton Master Gardeners with the purchase of beautiful flowers or bulbs, you may do so. The sale ends on November the 1st. If you're interested, there's a link at the bottom. Please don't forget to fill out the survey at the end. We'd like to know what you liked about today's demonstration. Give us ideas on ways we can improve. And also, we'd like to know some topics that you're interested in for future classes that we can teach. And don't forget, you can always find all of our past classes on our YouTube channel. I enjoyed being with you today. It was a lot of fun.